Well, thank you everyone for registering and attending our 8th Learning Views webinar series, sponsored by TrainingPros and Harrisburg University. My name is Dave Edelman. I'm a Relationship Manager with TrainingPros. In this month's webinar, Leveraging Social Media as an Organizational Learning Tool, we're going to explore social media as a vehicle for knowledge distribution and explore some social media tools that are being used really successfully out there. We hope that you'll be able to walk away from the session better informed on social media as a learning tool and be able to start implementing some of the strategies that you see. We'll also give you some strategies for assessing your organization's readiness for social media and share some tips for incorporating social media into your organization's learning solutions. So really looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to it, I think, as much as anybody. It's going to be a great webinar. Just to tell you a little bit about TrainingPros, we are the leading provider of contract L&D talent in the U.S. We provide organizations the talent they need to design, develop, and deliver learning solutions for their organizations, whether they don't have the capacity to get the projects done or there's a specific expertise that they need that they don't have on staff. Folks in my role of relationship managers are all from the L&D industry, and we really invest in learning our clients' culture and their business. We have a huge talent pool of professional consultants that can tackle really any L&D project. And we help onboard, support, and offboard our consultants with a proven methodology that really makes things easier for our clients and consultants. So that's a little bit about TrainingPros. And just to introduce myself, I'm a relationship manager with TrainingPros. I've been in the training industry for over 20 years. Let's just leave it at that. With companies like Disney, Merck, AmerisourceBergen, and Assurant. So again, my role is to help companies find the contract talent they need. I'm also the VP of Community Relations for Atlanta ATD. Shout out to Atlanta ATD, formerly ASTD, if you're not familiar with that acronym yet. In Community Relations, we work with community partners like Atlanta Habitat, United Way, Atlanta Community Food Bank, Goodwill of North Georgia, and provide service using our learning and development talents. So that's enough about me. Oh, here's a slide for those folks that want more detail on how TrainingPros can help your organization. There's just some examples of just some of the types of consultants in our vast talent pool. And let's just talk for a moment about our partnership with Harrisburg University. We're partnering on these Learning Views webinar series because we want to share the latest developments that TrainingPros is observing with our clients. So a lot of this is based on, the topics that we pick are based on what's really hot out there. And we also want to help Harrisburg University spread the word about their university's master's level program for professionals who want to pursue an advanced degree in the learning technology space. So I think hopefully all of our stragglers have come in by now, so I will move on to introduce our speaker. Really happy to have Theresa Davenport. She's a great example of the quality of our TrainingPros consultants. To get a little plug in there. She's an OD and ISD consultant, president of Davenport Design and Development, and her passion is really to empower others to use their knowledge, skills, and abilities at their highest level. We at TrainingPros really want to thank Theresa for taking her time to facilitate this webinar. And with that, I'll turn it over to Theresa. Thanks, Theresa.
All right. Thank you for that great intro, David. I appreciate it. And I'm so excited about this webinar. I will share just a little bit more about me before we jump in because it's really more about you. I have a website and a couple of different ways that you can contact me. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah, there we go. My email address, my company is Davenport Design and Development. Been consulting with that firm for about 20 years. So my email address is about 20 years old. It's like an antique email address. And you can also reach me via LinkedIn. I would love to get an invite from you on LinkedIn. And also encourage you to look at my website, Davenport Design and Development. I was saying that's about you. I've tried to fill it with content and resources that really can move you further along the path as a learning and design consultant. And I've got a course there if you'd like to take it. That's kind of the basics of instructional systems design. If you're trying to refresh yourself on the basics or get started in instructional design, it's called How to Write Learning Objectives, but it's much more than just that. I wrote the course from a perspective of really teaching you how to be a change manager within your organization and how to use those learning objectives to see a much deeper and broader context of how learning happens. So if you take that course, be sure to use the coupon code there on the screen, and I would love to hear from you. So let's just go ahead and jump in. We thrive when we are in control of what we're learning, from whom we're learning it, when we're learning it, and how we're applying it. Social learning enables all of that. So says Marcia Connor in her book, The New Social Learning. And if you think about it, that's what all of us are doing right now. We chose to be here. You chose to learn about this topic and when you wanted to learn and hopefully how. And hopefully it won't be so boring that you're doing other social learning while we're doing this. But that is kind of what happens with social learning, isn't it? So let's jump on in with our topics. First of all, we're going to kind of go through the 5 W's and an H. What types of learning? The 5 W's, what, where, when, why. What types of social learning will we be or social media qualify for social learning? We'll look at the different contexts and definitions of those two things, and why should we use social media for learning? When should we use social media? When is it appropriate? Who should use social media for learning? And how do I know when my organization is ready for learning via social media? Finally, how can we use it effectively? And actually, we're going to go into, at the very end, some really great tips for you as a learning consultant as to how can I be a part of this process, how can I keep myself viable in a social learning world. So I want to start with a poll, and you'll see it appear on the screen in just a minute. Just want to know, is your organization using social media? And if you're consulting with a number of organizations, pick one, or kind of think of them holistically. You know, how much are they leveraging social media? Or if you're not sure what qualifies as social media, well, you could mark that. Funny, looks like everybody knows what social media is. Cool. All right. Oh, interesting that the no's are winning. We're not using social media for learning. Wow. Okay. Limited basis. And we've got a couple of all the times. Awesome. I look forward to hearing from you guys. And by the way, that chat down at the bottom is going to stay open all day or all hour. And I encourage you, any comments you want to make as we move along, please do. So comment on anything about this poll. And Justin, if you would end that poll, and we'll go ahead and continue on. Thank you. All right. So first of all, let's start with definitions. What is social media? And, I told you use the chat. I would love for you guys to just, whatever you perceive, whatever you think would define social media in just a quick sentence or a quick phrase or statement, would you enter that in the chat down below? What is social media? All right, we're getting lists of apps. But if you had to define them contextually, what tools for connecting, okay, interacting with others on an online platform. Awesome. Allow people to communicate online, electronically. Here we go. Online method for communicating to a broad audience. All right. Spreading information. Cool. Okay. Others have attempted to define social media, but one thing that's really cool about what we're doing today is I think we're going to be branching into some new territory. So, we may come away from this webinar and have a new Wikipedia entry for how we're going to define social media. I found a definition as well that seems to be fairly comprehensive. It's websites, a noun, websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. So apps, websites, creating, sharing, social networking. It's all of that. And I thought that was fairly representative of what it is, but I love your contributions as well. So examples, some of you just listed examples, and you can see plenty right here on the screen. Go ahead down below, those of you that didn't list specific ones, list some of your favorite examples of social media in the chat. You can see we've got here on the screen, the usual, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, yep, Yammer, okay, Yammer, Pinterest, then Felicia, if you would quickly just add another note about how you would define Yammer. I looked at it briefly. Yeah, there's another Yammer. Foursquare. Cool. Okay, and then there's just a few of the old standbys there on the screen. Okay, Facebook for organizations, and that's something I wanted to point out. For any of the wide open cloud-based social media apps that we'll discuss today, you can find a corollary for organizations, and I'll show you a little bit how to do that in just a minute. Well, we're actually right here. This is called the Conversation Prism. It is available to you at the right as a link, on the screen as a link at the bottom of this screen, because it's way too small for us to really see in its present form. But you can download yours over here at the far right under, I believe that's presenter notes. I think everyone can see that. I'm going to make my screen go large just so I can talk about this. Okay, so at the middle of the prism is you, and then you can see some circles, some concentric circles outside of you, like divisions for vision and environment, and then there's a larger category that's got brand and development and those types of things. But one I wanted to point out is that triangular one at the right bottom called learning. If you notice, all of those apps in all of those categories have something to do with learning. So we'll coin the term here, social learning. And I would encourage you, if there's some of these apps in some of these categories, notice at the bottom there's a category for business. If you look at the outside of the prism, but you'll see all sorts of categories, all sorts of apps you've probably never heard of. So I encourage you to explore them, because this is what I was saying about, for example, Yammer being the corollary of Facebook, but it's for organizations. So you'll see a lot of those here. And if you see a category you think might be good for your organization, but you don't recognize the apps, query on it and find out more about it. But I thought this was a great resource for a comprehensive look at what social media is available to us. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. Most of us in learning and development have heard that statement from Benjamin Franklin. But social media and learning through social media really is probably the furthest we've ever been with this statement, because we can be involved in and in charge of our own learning. So that is really cool. So now we're moving to a new term. We talked about social media and tried to define that. And now we really can define something that has never been defined before. So based on what we just saw, here's social media. We're learning. How would you define social learning? And just while you're thinking and writing your little one statement, I did the little research. I thought, well, maybe someone has coined the term, and I believe it was Albert Bandura. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He did coin the phrase back in the late 60s to mid-70s, but it was an instructional design concept useful for marketing, and it basically says, well, I find someone that I want to model, I watch what they're doing, and I do it. Or if they're drinking a certain drink, then I probably should drink it. So it's kind of that, who's that, Malcolm Gladwell? But it's kind of that thing where you follow somebody because you like what they're doing. Well, I guess you could apply that to what we're talking about today, but we're really talking about learning through social media. So I'm seeing some definitions here: learners communicating, interacting with each other, owning the owning the learning, sharing, network, collaboration, interaction, observation. These are great. Mentoring, sharing, okay. Using application to share information. Some of the good ones I think already went by. Let's see, great. Okay, these are good. Working together, learning from group experience. Remember, we've got to get that social media aspect in there too. These are good. All right. Well, I've got one that I came up with, probably not entirely on my own. This probably came from a resource I'm going to show you in a few minutes from Bloomfire. I honestly don't remember, but I like it. Social learning is the process of learning through social interaction between peers. And I just realized there's a word missing there. Really, media needs to be there, because we are focusing on social media, electronic learning. So we might could improve this still just a little bit. Yeah, the media platform that someone says down there. That's great. So that's social learning, and I'm going to shorten our whole social media learning through organizations. From now on, I'll just refer to that as social learning, and for our context today, focusing on learning within organizations. So it can take place in lots of ways. Probably all of us have experienced what I'm about to share. But if you've had chats, online chats with people for the purpose of learning from each other, that's an example. A topic-targeted forum where you've exchanged information back and forth, maybe with an online class, where you had to participate in a forum or a discussion board. Teams doing real-time problem solving, hey, can we jump on a call really fast and look at this document together or discuss this graphics, those types of things, where you have live video and phone conferences. What we're doing right now, we're not really solving a problem. Well, we are. We're solving the world's problems through social learning. But webinars are an example of that real-time collaborative aspect. Communities of practice. If you haven't heard of communities of practice, I really encourage you to check them out. They are an awesome way to share information, again, in an interest-focused format. So we'll be looking at those in a few minutes. Social software, what we've been talking about all during our discussion so far, the typical Twitter and LinkedIn. Expertise directories, what we think of when we think of Wikipedia, or if your company has its own proprietary knowledge base where everyone goes to access your, you're trying to help a customer, you need to remember the process for whatever it is they're trying to do, those types of things. So we're going to call those, for our purposes today, wikis, and put them in the category of social learning. So let's look at some examples of social learning. First, LinkedIn. If you haven't joined LinkedIn, go ahead and do that. Set up a profile, and as you set up a profile, you're going to put in some information that will prompt LinkedIn to ask you if you would like to join some groups. If you've never set up a profile, I encourage you to look at mine. I've set mine up like a sort of like an online resume, and because I set up that way, LinkedIn, its intuitive side, asked me a lot of questions that helped me build my profile, and one of those things was introducing groups. So this is just one snapshot of a number of groups that I'm in, ATD being one that's really active. The little squares, the gray squares, represent current discussions that are going on, active discussions. Now, why would you want to do this? Because if you are a member of an organization that you're trying to promote, then anytime you participate in these groups as a contributor or posting in response to someone else's post, then you are increasing the visibility of your organization and the knowledge capital represented by you on behalf of your organization. So this is what it would look like if you're a contributor, and within a group, you could either just enter, start a discussion, maybe a link to a blog that you've written or a white paper or just your website in general, or something specific, or even just a question. You want to open a discussion. So that's a great way to do it. Also, contribute. If you want to really be valued by others, then submit to others' questions your thoughts, your suggestions, and your feedback to them. And that is really how you can gain some credibility quickly within LinkedIn, is being a valued contributor. And again, not just for you, not for social learning just for you, but also for your organization. I mentioned earlier a community of practice, and I can't say enough about these. This one I have on the screen right now is called Workforce 3, the number 3, workforce31.org. If any of you has anything to do with talent acquisition or developing a talent pipeline, this is a great community of practice to join. It is from the Department of Labor, the Employment and Training Administration, and I was tasked to be on the group of consultants that started putting together these communities. And the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, Thao, T-H-A-O Nelson. Encourage you to link with her too. She was managing this 21st century apprenticeship back when we got this set up. And I'll just show you what her community looked like. I think it's now managed by Chad. Chad Alishar, I think. You can join this community or any of these communities, and then you can access all of the resources here within this particular interest area. You can also share your resources in the form of video, blogs. You can participate in the discussions. You can upload videos And of course, you can access any of these things. You can also participate in webinars that they have here. So while this is something useful to you perhaps in your line of work now, it is also a model that you can duplicate within your organization fairly simply. Anyone who knows how to manage websites and set them up, this is not a terribly difficult thing to do. But when when they start to recognize it as a community of practice, it takes on special meaning. I'm sorry. I'm struggling with some throat issues today. Hold on just one moment. Okay, I think I'm back. Chat amongst yourselves. The next one is YouTube, and I'm going to try to get my voice back here. Perhaps you have set up your own YouTube channel, or you've participated in one, but if you think about this in terms of your organization, you can do this within your organization. You know, with YouTube, you can only invite certain subscribers, but also, like I said earlier, if your organization is not comfortable with YouTube, you can find, I'm sure, a similar app that you can purchase just for your organization. And within it, you can organize videos that are instructional. So that is a cool way to go. I'll talk about it a good bit more later in our webinar, because we as learning designers, I find myself at least, doing a lot of work with the knowledge owners, equipping people who own the knowledge capital within the organization, teaching them how to teach others, basically, is what I end up doing a lot. And this is a very fast way to move, is using videos as instruction. Another example of social learning is the corporate wiki that I mentioned earlier, and it's really richer than your typical knowledge base. I saw one example, this company called Bloomfire. I'm not endorsing them in any way. I'm not endorsing any particular app or software or anything today. I'm just trying to give you examples. But I did notice that Bloomfire's website had some great information on social learning. So a corporate wiki, it's more streamlined than a community of practice, but it is somewhat similar. It is that Wikipedia, that serves just your organization. So it is another method of learning, social learning within your organization. These are some examples of collaborative learning. Several years ago, a friend of mine that I was working with said, Theresa, we need to work on this document together. So will you get on Google Docs and let's just look at it together? And I was like, okay, how do I do that? So he said, okay, download this app and let's get to work. And so we did. The document was in front of him and in front of me. Of course, we're on two different sides of the world, but we were both editing the document simultaneously. And it was a very collaborative experience. I've never forgotten it. By the way, if anyone knows of other simultaneous editing documents or apps like that, feel free to enter them in the chat. This is just one example, but I love the aspect of being able to edit in real time together, even if you're not in the same place. And another one that I like, if you have people that are really into warm fuzzies and you like to see them, they like to see you, and then things like Skype for Business, Google Hangouts, they are primarily focused on video as opposed to document sharing. And then today, what we are using is Adobe Connect. There's Join.me. There's WebEx. There are a number of suites out there that are primarily focused on a document or on a visual like what we're doing today. So that is another form of collaborative learning, and we are being social, and we're chatting. So I would say it definitely falls in that category of a form of social media that we as learning development consultants can leverage. So now let's look at a real-life example, okay? Let's put you in the driver's seat right there with that new payroll system. You have been tasked with creating some deliverables, and it's up to you to figure out what, to teach the employees within a company how to use this new payroll system. They've got to know how to use it by the first of the month, and you've got to move fast. So what you have decided is you're going to create a job aid. A job aid is basically that's something that gives a high level with them, what's in it for me, what is it, what are its features and business benefits, and maybe a quick overview of how you use it, maybe with some links to more in-depth information of how to use it. So you've written that, and now you're going to distribute that. And you've decided I'm going to distribute it on my corporate website as a big link to announce that it's here right there on the home page. It's also going to be within HR's website. They're part of the website on the intranet. You're going to post it as a community of practice. You have that also, so it's going to be within the interest group for the human resources. So you've got your blog post. You've also created some tutorials in Captivate or Storyline that teach people specifically through simulations how to use each aspect of the of the payroll system. So you've got about 5 of those ready to go, and you're going to disseminate those through your wiki, your corporate wiki. They will be links right there in the wiki. Through your community of practice, again, there will be more detailed links for people who want to know how to use it. It will be right there on the HR page. And the blog, the job aid, actually references these Storyline or Captivate tutorials as well. So now you have a job aid, and you have these simulations. And they are in the wiki, they're in the corporate website, they're in the community of practice. Now, you've also partnered with a C-level or a high-level person within your organization who is going to do just a promotional video saying we're excited about the payroll system, it's great, we're going to, you're going to make lots more money because you use it, and so on. So that person's doing a video, and they want you to help them script it. So you help script a video, and it goes out through your corporate YouTube channel, and again through your corporate website, goes into your community of practice, goes into the wiki, and the person doing the promo video also references the blog with a link on the screen and the simulations. Hey, you want to know more about it? Go to these spots. So these are all being linked together. Also, you set up a webinar, kind of a lunch and learn, to walk through the steps of how to use the payroll system. And when you do the webinar, you actually use the tutorials you'd already created, and you just walk through them in a live, interactive, chatting back and forth type of way. And it's recorded, and it's also a link on the community of practice, on the corporate website, and in the wiki. Desk share. IT does some support for payroll, and they realize they're getting the same questions again and again. So they create a FAQ, a frequently asked questions list, pass it through you. You make it sort of instructionally sound so people understand what's being asked, what's being answered. And again, those are uploaded to the wiki. And they are going through the community of practice, say, hey, are you having problems with X, Y, and Z? Well, here's how to deal with those problems. So you're using, again, the same social media outlets for those frequently asked questions. So those are just examples of how you can use social learning, social media within your organization if you are wearing the hat of a learning designer. Another problem we frequently, not a problem, but an opportunity, is most organizations have customers. Well, a lot of times we as learning designers are tasked with developing either information or how-to for the end user audience, the customers. So this is an example of a website that really leverages a lot of social media. And the first one, this is really small, but I'm going to just tell you this first little box I'm going to circle or put a square around. It says tag camera, I think it's what it says. But what people do is this is an app. And when they click that camera, this office is a government office that services about 5 different county functions, like getting your tag renewed, getting your driver's license, getting a marriage license, all sorts of those types of paperwork. Well, the big thing is people don't want to go and stand in line to get their tags. Right there they click from their phone, their mobile phone, and they can see the tagline and decide, based on how long the line is, whether they want to go right then or not. So it's serving the public in that way. It's information. Also notice at the right you've got Facebook and Twitter, and uh, this office, or this, yeah, it's probate office, uses Facebook and Twitter to send out links to informational, um, step-by-step how-to things. How do I renew my tag online? Where do I go if I want to vote? Oh, they're over elections also. So all those types of information go through on these Twitter and Facebook tweets and posts, and they really just link back to how-to resources. And at the bottom of the screen is also a map that people can click on. It goes straight to Google Maps, and people type in their address, and they can see, here's where I go to vote, and here's my directions to get there. Another thing that he does, and by the way, that person up there, he's my husband. He just happened to mention these things to me by chance last night. I was like, wow, you're talking about exactly what I'm talking about. One thing he does is he gets people like the governor, state representatives, other people that are aware of the focus that this office has on customer service, and they do short videos of encouragement. They also, within the office, behind in their own corporate intranet, they can send little video encouragements to each other, say if they're having a birthday, or if they've hit their certain customer service metrics, and everyone sees that when that happens. Everyone knows. So they use short videos to encourage each other. Also blogs and informational articles. Um, uh, Patrick gets people to write, people like attorneys and people who have subject matter expertise that these employees need. They write blog articles, and they get uploaded to the internal intranet for these people to read and learn about how to handle certain types of problems that they encounter. And then they do have the lunch and learns that we mentioned earlier. They do webinars, record the webinars, and they participate live. And then if they get new employees or they want to watch them later, they can. So I've talked both about internal employees and as well as customer-facing ways to leverage social media for learning. And like I said, many of us are tasked with educating the end customer. I already mentioned the Google Maps there at the right, so I'm going to move on. Statistics. That's one example right there of someone that's leveraging social media for learning. But until I saw these statistics, I really wasn't aware of how pervasive it is or how pervasive the desire to use social learning is. So right here, we see 70 to 90% of workplace learning happens informally. So it's more of just Q&A among employees, or researching outside your organization to figure out how to do something. By the way, you can see the link here at the bottom if you want to explore this more fully, and there is a white paper that goes into quite a bit of detail about the statistics I'm showing you right here. Employees value informational workplace learning more than training and e-learning. And to us who develop training and e-learning, that's not very encouraging. But you know what? If that is a true statistic, we better get on the bandwagon and figure out how to do this thing. So 87% say social knowledge sharing among team members is essential. 37%, only 37, say formal company training is essential. Wow. So again, these are just examples of the value employees place on formal training. Companies spend $70 billion in the United States on corporate learning in the year 2013. But you picture a classroom. If you sat in one, or if you've been facilitating one, and I know some of you on this call have, how many times have you noticed that the people in your room are not listening to you? They're on their phone, they're on their tablet, they're on their laptop. They may be exploring the very topic that you're discussing, but they're way ahead of you. It happens all the time. They're not actively engaged. Over 50% of companies are using social learning practices today. I think that's interesting, and I'm not going to do it right now, but if we later go back and look at our poll at the beginning to see, was our poll representative of this? 2/3 plan to implement or increase social learning initiatives in the future. So pretty much everybody is either using it or have plans and are designating budgets to incorporate social learning. So I'd like to hear from you now that we've kind of taken a little tour, learned a little bit about social media and social learning. Um, what have you used? Preferably, I'd like you to answer this within your organization for learning. Now, if you haven't done that at all, then just tell me, what have you used to learn, um, and again, primarily for purposes of your work. But if you never have, you looked at Pinterest to redecorate your house or whatever. But I'm trying to keep us focused on organizational learning right now. So YouTube videos. Wow. On YouTube, if anyone wants to comment down at the bottom, were you looking at anything specific, like TED Talks or a particular genre or type of YouTube videos? And we had LinkedIn. I'm guessing articles. If anyone wants to elaborate on what you're putting in the poll down in the chat, that would be great. TED Talks, okay. Yeah. And yeah, someone mentioned those statistics. Keep in mind those statistics were written to sell a product. You always have to keep that in mind when you look at stats. They have a purpose. Okay, and Facebook. All right. Community of practice. I see we have 40% actually using communities of practice. That is great. All right. We can move on. Thanks for that. Great information. Okay. Now, you've talked about that app that you've used and what you liked about it. We're going to look at another chat now that's going to get a little deeper. It's going to ask you, I think, several different questions. Can we get that one going here? Yeah. Okay. Describe your favorite social media learning experience in terms of what app did you use and what if you shared something, what did you share in terms of the learning content? Or if you learned something, what was it you learned? So if you could just give us your little scenario, if you can't think of your favorite, just think of one that was particularly meaningful to you. Yeah, I love the Google Docs. Those are great. Um, one that I use on a daily basis is just phone conferences with a desk share. We're all looking, we're talking, and we're chatting. Chat. We're using our chat as well. Is that my business? Captivate. Oh yeah. YouTube videos in house. Link is great. Link is quickly desktop sharing and collaboration. Yeah. Oh, cool. About the car keys and bracelets. That's great. Okay. Excellent. Skype for collaboration. Notice, too, think through this as you're writing these and looking at these. Some of these are synchronous and some are asynchronous. In other words, some of these you were looking back at past content that had been loaded, and some of these you were collaborating with others. And I think it's important for us as designers to think in that context. Okay. I hate to take this one down, but I do want to keep moving. So if you can try to wrap these up. Okay. Wow. Sounds like somebody's got a nice little business there with the bracelets. That's awesome. Process mapping. Oh, process mapping. Collaborative tools are awesome for process mapping. Okay. That was great info. Um, another chat. Why do you think, and think in terms of return on investment, the benefits, the tangible benefits for your organization, why do you think social learning is a good thing? And you can just use the chat down at the bottom, but what value do you think social learning has for your organization? Yeah, just chat down at the bottom. Global, it's new, exciting, and fun. It sure is. It is low cost. The things I was thinking about this, the website I showed you of the county government, the things that I mentioned did not cost a thing. Those infrastructures were already there. They don't cost anything. Just-in-time learning, yes. Travel budget reductions majorly. Yeah, lower no cost. Yeah, classroom time, materials, travel. Wow, it's huge. It's huge. Okay, good. I've got a few more here. Let's see. And mine are more learner focused, probably. Just this is stating the obvious, but uploading user-generated content, sharing those best practices and collateral by peers, it really is an ego booster for the person who uploads and the person who benefits. Not that that's, that's important, but it does give people a sense of value to their organization when they realize that what they know is helpful to others. And it's that self-directed autonomy. I think we'll talk a little bit about millennials in a minute, but so many of us are driven by feeling that we're in control and in control of our learning. Developing the online communities, the collaboration, the shared experience. You know, we are on our computers. We haven't actually seen each other face to face today, but we are sharing a learning experience, and there is, I think, a great intrinsic value in that. Mobile, and I think somebody was even on this webinar mobile today. We can learn anywhere as long as we've got an internet connection. Metrics go beyond a grade, beyond, they include reports, gamification, leaderboard. There is so much you can do to excite people about social learning and how they're, you know, people who like to measure against the performance of others. There are fun and exciting ways to do that. Now, moving on, looking at the other side, if any of you have experienced resistance to social learning in your organization, why? Why are people saying no to social control? Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot. We do have a chat for that. This one you can actually put your answers right here in the chat. These are all anonymous chats. But why are organizations saying no to social media as a learning tool? And just think about your own experiences. Okay, yeah, the measurements may not be easy to track. That's true. Don't understand. Some tools, cost, security, control. Yeah, I think you're hitting the big ones that I've experienced for sure. Lack of confidence. Yeah, is it work or play? Yeah. Yeah, they prefer instructor-led hands-on learning. Um, yeah, and a lot of times learning and development organizations feel that they're having a lack of ownership once social learning becomes so pervasive. They feel a loss of control. Yeah, and suspicion as far as it's new. We're not quite sure where this is going to go. All right, well, thank you. Those are good. Great responses. I have a few, and they're probably just going to be a collection of a synopsis of what you just said. Big one, I think the biggest one for sure that I encounter is intellectual property leaks, because it's so easy. Even if you are behind the firewall with your social learning, it is so easy, because we're so familiar with social learning, for us to accidentally share that information outside the firewall. So intellectual property leaks are a huge concern, especially for the cloud-based apps that we have available to us. Also, if you don't have a content manager, bad or erroneous information can be hard to spot. And then once it's out and everybody assumes that it's fact, it's very hard to pull it back. So I think someone mentioned that, but that is a very valid concern, and the reason you need a content manager for things like communities of practice and wikis. The culture of the organization. All right, if you've got thought leaders in your organization, they're going to begin to drive your culture. And if you are a vested, if you're at a high level within your organization, you realize that those thought leaders are taking the culture in an area in a way that you didn't want to go, it's a loss of control, essentially. I've noticed several people did put control there, and that's just one way. And that's basically just restating what I just said, the ownership. Okay, and someone else mentioned this. Topical learning can soon get off topic, and we know we've all done that. Oh, I'm going to look at this link, and an hour and a half later, you've looked at 10 other links, and they had nothing to do with where you started. So, what conditions create the ideal environment for social learning within your organization? In other words, kind of what parameters do you think you need to have if organizational learning, social learning, is going to be effective? Feel free to answer any of these things down in the chat as I'm showing information on the screen. First of all, it's great if whatever that learning is has a specific defined purpose that really adds value to your organization. It doesn't need to just be, what it's National Dog Day or whatever. It needs to be focused. Like I've already said, it needs to be moderated. And the people who are using it need to be disciplined and goal-focused. And I say that carefully because I have some people I work with that are very spatial and very ADHD, and actually they get to the point way ahead of me. They just get there a very different way. So I'm saying this very carefully. Some people leverage social learning very effectively. From my view, they don't seem disciplined and goal-focused, but they actually are. If you have people like that working in your organization, you just have to think, they think differently. They get to information differently. Switching gears just a little bit, this is a job aid that I encourage you to download. It's over here on the left under Tools and Resources. Um, Anyone who's worked with me knows I love Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom's revised taxonomy. I talked about it a little bit on our last webinar, and just to brief you, if you're not familiar with it, really quickly, if you start from the bottom up at remembering, on this left-hand side, remembering and understanding, this is a way of thinking about how people learn. We typically start with remembering, retaining information about concepts. You can just use the example of our ABCs, and we learned them very young. We could say the song. We didn't know what it meant. And then over time, we began to realize that those letters actually mean something, and that was our understanding level, and we could see them and recognize them and begin to put them into words. So that's when we began to get into the application level of learning. We could apply those letters to make something meaningful. And then in the upper levels of learning, analyzing and evaluating, we can take the basic rules and concepts that we know, that we understand, then layer them over a more complex situation and say, well, if it was this here, then it must be that there. So we get into more complex scenarios and are able to apply those concepts, and that allows us to grow in our understanding. Finally, at the top of the paradigm, we take everything we know and we create something new. So, in the case of letters, maybe someone writes a book or writes a novel, creating a whole new story. In our business processes, we create a new process, we create a new product or a new service or a new way of working more efficiently. So that's how Bloom's taxonomy works. Now, as far as us today, social learning, if you're a designer and you're thinking, okay, this is all great, now how do I work this into my curriculum development, my design? Well, if you look at the left side of the table here, you see I've got a label called Asynchronous Social Learning, meaning learning where it doesn't take place collaboratively. Someone uploaded a YouTube video, and later someone watches it. Someone posted a Wiki article or a how-to, and later someone sees it. Same thing with the community of practice or the Twitter feeds or the LinkedIn article. They happen, and then later someone else benefits from that. On the right-hand side, you've got synchronous social learning. That's that collaborative aspect that we've been talking about. And right now we've got our webinar. We've got video apps, the Skype, and we've got editing apps. We talked about editing documents together. And then the desk share apps, which are similar to webinars, where you're looking at someone else's screen, trying to help them or work together. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you look at the brightest green, those columns are best used for those levels of learning. So on the far right side, the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy are really for more of the collaborative apps that we have, because we are working together. If someone's trying to sort through an advanced scenario, then someone else might be helping them or evaluating how they are interpreting the scenario. It's collaborative. They're working together trying to create a new process, doing process mapping. They are collaborating with these synchronous social learning tools. But down at the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy, you've got your asynchronous social learning. It doesn't need reinforcement. You don't need immediate feedback. You just read something and you learn from it. So this is the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. And by the way, as far as adding value for us as designers, we cannot all just be Googlers. If all we know how to do is Google information, we really never come out of the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. So I think we as designers A challenging and exciting part of our job is moving people to the top of Bloom's taxonomy, equipping them with skills so that they don't just understand and do some applying, but they are able to actually create for themselves. So I think that's a job that we have that will never go away. So again, I encourage you to download this and just refer to it in the future as you're designing. Okay, now we're into the whens. When is social media the ideal learning tool for organizational learning? I'm going to skip through these pretty quickly because I think they're things we may have already touched on. When knowledge or skills is needed to be shared from one to many within the organization. It is a tool for getting information from your knowledge experts to the masses. It is speedy, and speed is so important. You know, a lot of times if you sat in the instructional designer's chair, we get tasked with, okay, here's your group of subject matter experts. Here's your target audience. Here is what the target audience needs to learn, and we got to have this done in 6 months. Okay, so we spend all this time with the subject matter experts to produce that training 6 months later. With social learning, we can cut that time drastically by equipping those subject matter experts to use social learning. So speed is very much a part of social learning. The knowledge or skills being shared are not easily misunderstood. So, you know, when you've got something highly complex, social learning is probably not the best way to go. That's when you really do need more focused and perhaps extensive learning environments. But simple, quick things are great. Also, we mentioned the intellectual property aspect. It's ideal when that information that's being shared is not highly confidential. So real quickly, if anyone has any scenarios in their own experience that, you know, your ideas are starting to pop, I would love to hear from you on the chat as to, well, I think this scenario would be ideal for social learning. Does anyone have any ideas that they're beginning to think about? A project you're currently working on, something you've done recently, you think, well, I could have done that. Yeah, global teams for sure, yeah. Okay. I encourage you to continue to just add down at the bottom. I see the people are typing and the brains are thinking, so I don't want to distract you, but I think I will keep on pushing on. Remember, we'll be able to access these chats later and come back and review what we wrote. So I'm going to move on to the who now. Who benefits from social learning? Few people that benefit are those that have the message that creates value once others know it. So the knowledge experts benefit just because they now have a way that they can share their knowledge quickly and easily. Those who need to know, the recipients of that information, it's of value to them. Those who have a vested interest in the organization, you see the knowledge capital of your organization increasing and increasing at lightning speed. Definitely want to address millennials and younger. That's just social learning is really the primary vehicle I think that the majority of millennials learn through, even when they're sitting in what are supposed to be structured learning environments. If it's not on mobile, it didn't happen, so says Luis Suarez. Meet them where they are and empower them through continual self-directed social learning opportunities facilitated through appropriate interactive tools. That is a mouthful by Marcia Connor. But basically what it means is speaking to us as learning designers, we provide these portals for learning, and millennials will find them. So I think this is what I just said. Organizations need to provide millennials with ways to contribute and connect nonstop. And you know what's going to happen? Those that are smart, those that are leveraging social media, if you don't provide it within your organization, they're going to go elsewhere, and you're going to lose some great talent. In the future, as social learning becomes a part of the workplace, what does the future look like? Well, if you're sitting in the talent acquisition area and you're interviewing and you're trying to get qualified applicants, well, you may be starting to ask more questions like, what social media do you use? What kinds of things have you learned through your social media that have helped you on the job? Those are the types of questions you're going to be asking because that's what's going to contribute value to your organization. the ability to learn rapidly, synthesize ideas, add new learning in the workplace will become more valuable than hiring somebody who has a long list of industry expertise. It's how fast can you learn? How fast can you learn? That is the question of the day, because if those opportunities for learning are going to be provided, it's just a matter of how fast can they get up to speed using the social learning available. Another thing we need to think about as learning designers is even with the existing comprehensive training that we may have created, how can we break those down now and put them, just like you saw the payroll example, how can we take this expansive learning and now break it down into just-in-time chunks that are available quickly, easily, and when and where they're needed. Companies' ability to compete will depend on how quickly its members can share and apply knowledge. Wow, it really does change things. It changes the landscape for us as learning and development consultants. So I want to talk about that for just a minute. In the last webinar I introduced the Delta window as being a look at where we are now and where we want to be. And thinking with your learning and development hat on, also add that you have a change management hat on. We do. Many times in an organization, it is our job, and we are actually asked to help change the perceptions, change the behaviors, change the attitudes. So with that said, the Delta window is a picture of the real state, where we are now, and the ideal state. So you think for yourself right now, the organizations I'm picturing that I'm trying to help, where are we now in terms of stakeholders? What is their perception about social learning? What are the current strategies that are being used right now for social learning? And what systems do we currently have in place? And then take those same three categories and think, okay, how can I change stakeholder perceptions? How can I introduce strategies to move us to social learning? And what systems do we need that we don't currently have? That is the way to think, and that is the way to go from where you are now to what we'll call, for lack of a simpler term, the ideal state. So we've got a chat here that Justin's going to put on the screen. And remember, this is your visioning opportunity right now. This is for you. If you write something here and you think, oh, I don't want to lose this, just remember, Justin's going to tell us how to get to this again later, or you can take a picture of your screen. But on this anonymous chat, go ahead and list for yourself, okay, here's where we are, and here's my timeline. Here's where we want to be. So the first question really says, you answer, here we are now, and here's where I want to be. And in the second chat, you can say, and here's how long I would like to give myself and our organization to get there. So it's sort of a complex question, but not really. I mean, you could even think back to our original poll. We use it some. We use it not at all. We don't even know what it is. We're using some. I'd like to use more. I'd like to add a community of practice. I think we could benefit from a wiki. You know, just maybe list one type of social media that you'd like to see in your organization, and over how long do you think it would take to get you there? Yesterday, yeah, no doubt. Okay. I think this is something perhaps maybe some of you need to think about for a while, but I do encourage you to use this structure to really get your organization into a social learning mode, and think about who are your stakeholders, what are your strategies, and what are your systems, and just begin to move it forward. So Justin, you can take down this poll and we will move on. Okay, and so this is sort of the question I was just asking or posing to you. Okay, how do I move my organization towards social learning? And here are some ways. Um, First of all, implement it into your learning solution designs. You can go back to the two models, the two examples I gave you earlier, and think, as I'm developing my design document, I can have a column here for the types of social learning that I think would be appropriate for this learning solution. And as I've also been saying, I need to spend more time as a learning and development consultant working with my subject matter experts in how they can quickly broadcast their knowledge straight to the target audience. So I think SMEs are going to become somebody that we're going to continue to work with closely and continue to empower with skills for facilitation. Start creating learning solutions for social learning, and I've got a couple of ways here. First of all, break down e-learning courses into those brief, process-focused links. If you've done an hour-long e-learning course, suggest to your stakeholders we can keep the course, but let's take this particular sim that lasts 2 minutes and provide it as a link right on the ERP software where people need it. Just, they can access it directly. So those are some ways that we can start breaking it down. Put those tutorials in your corporate knowledge base or wiki. Incorporate gamification. Make it fun. Create your leaderboards. We didn't get into this much today. That's a whole other topic we could spend time on. Encourage those desk shares. A lot of you have been saying, the global aspect. Absolutely. Start using more desk shares and social media apps for on-the-job learning. Articulate's eLearning Heroes is a great example of that. When I knew nothing about Articulate, I could go to this forum and query on anything I wanted to know, and I always saw great answers there. So that's just an example of a social media app for your new hires, how you could structure one within your organization. How do I retain my value? If you see all this social learning going on, it's autonomous, it's real time, you're thinking, okay, where do I fit in this picture as a learning designer? How do I retain my value? First of all, we do have to adapt. We have to see where things are going and make sure we get there first. And like I said earlier, just be the agent of change. Go ahead and say, hey, this is what's coming. I know how I can help. Acquire the skills necessary to facilitate social media. Those e-learning skills. Go ahead. If you don't know how, learn how to use Captivate, Articulate to develop e-learning. Okay, small design within macro design. This is a little bit reflecting back on Bloom's taxonomy. You, the learning consultant, may have a overall very large strategic learning picture that you and your stakeholders share. But within that, you break the learning down into these small micro chunks that we've been looking at today, like your community of practice and your wiki and your blog and so on. So there's still a big, large, moving learning picture going on, and you are managing that, but the learning segments are much smaller. Use social media for learning, such as, do things like write a white paper, if you haven't done any programming in Blackboard or developed a MOOC, online learning for universities has been growing. It's continuing to grow, and everyone that I've been doing programming for at the university level is really wanting to leverage social media. So learning to use something like Blackboard would be a great value and a way that you can stay in the social learning conversation. And yes, we will be getting slides. Justin, I'm going to turn that over to you in just a minute. Look, right now. Okay, well, I see we have nothing over in our Q&A, but someone did just ask a question about our slides. But if you have any questions related to our presentation today, I've been doing most of the talking, not a lot of looking down in the chat. So if there's anything you want to re-ask, wow, we're already past our time. But I'll let Justin close us down and tell us how we can get those slides.
Thank you very much, Theresa, and thank you, David, for introducing us. So there's a couple questions about information. I'll get that all synthesized, and we'll find out the best way to distribute that. I'm going to put my email address in here in case you have any questions. Looking for things, you can go ahead and reach out to me directly. We're going to wrap up here. That was a great, awesome presentation as always. Thank you very much, Theresa. quickly go through these last promotional slides here. A little bit about Harrisburg University, Learning Technologies Master of Science is awesome program. Produce a lot of good instructional system designers. We continue to offer these professional educational webinars and workshops. So that's a little bit about us. We've talked about TrainingPros. We're very proud to be working with TrainingPros. They're an awesome partner. A little bit about David. Thanks again, David. And we've looked at these slides before, so I know we're over time, but I do thank you for staying on. If you can just give us a minute or two and complete the feedback form here. We take this very seriously. We want to continue improving these so that they are of value for you. So this isn't going into a vacuum. We sit down, we do look at these, at the feedback that you provide, and I appreciate it. So that being said, thank you guys all for your participation. It made the session even that much more valuable, and I hope everyone has a really wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.